The planets have aligned, and with metronomic consistency, once again, the prophecy has come true. That's right, folks. It can mean only one thing. It's time for another episode of the Roundtable Rethink podcast. With me, your host, Uncle Paddy, joined every week by twin brother in spare parts bin, Andy, the asshole.
Woo! Come on now.
And back for the second time, the double dipper himself, Brian Maguire of Iola, the startup whisperer, Specs Jesus, the great and powerful Mogwai.
Don't feed him after midnight.
He back.
Bless you, my sons.
This week, we will be discussing Perplexity AI, the Swiss Army knife of AI models. We're also going to be starting a new series discussing the practical and tactical implementation of AI inside your business. And finally, we're double dipping. We're going back into the archives to revisit some of the entrepreneurial breakdown and in particular discuss where do ideas come from. And then we have a bonus round of more listener questions. There we go.
Ooh, try squeezing all that into 45 minutes or
Packed
less.
docket. So before we get into the docket, let's start with the usual question. What's been happening this week?
Everything's great. I'm just getting geared up for going away on holiday. We're off on a cruise on Sunday. I was away seeing Moulin Rouge at the Playhouse in Edinburgh on Saturday with my good lady wife and some friends. So we had a fabulous weekend. This week's just about getting caught up with work so that we can get away and cruise the Mediterranean for a week. So cannot wait.
Ryan, how's your week been?
Fantastic. I took my mum to see the Book of Mormon. Have you seen it?
No.
This is a very musical theatre
I know.
episode.
Check us
already.
out. You lovies, thespians, a lot of us. That was great. Really good show. Good show. I've seen it. I've seen
Where
it
was
before. The Kings.
Kings in
Yeah,
Glasgow.
yeah. It's not for those who are maybe deeply ingrained in religion. It suits people more like myself who've maybe strayed a little bit over the years.
And is the king still as claustrophobic as I remember it?
Intimate.
I feel like you're like, ugh.
Absolutely.
So what about you, Paddy, as the most bored multimillionaire in
stop.
Glasgow? What did you get up to?
I have had actually quite a busy week by my standards. I've had some consulting work to do. I've had a few calls.
A busy week by your standards.
By my standards. But
Did you hang a picture in the study?
No, it's actually been a reasonably busy week. Just catching up with people from work, catching up with people from the old business ES Tech, catching up with some of my colleagues there. So
We had a lovely breakfast with a good friend of ours this morning who actually was the inspiration for our listener
Stephen
question.
Cunningham, long-time listener of the podcast, great friend,
Childhood friend
bestie
from way back in the day.
Way back in the day.
Who inspired us with a fabulous listener question, which we'll cover off later. But first...
And of course, we should say that Stevie Tel Avivi is not here this week. He is off pursuing his second career as a tour guide.
shaking his ass as the world's most prolific and philosophical tour guide in the UK, taking geriatric American pensioners to see all the fantastic sights of UK and the UK and Ireland.
So you basically swapped out one old bald professional for another. You need more diversity in this show,
Stephen's
gentlemen.
body double.
Absolutely.
Stephen, we love you. We miss you. We'll see you when you get back. All right, let's get into the docket.
Let's get to it.
It struck me. So I have been a user of a tool called Perplexity almost from the very beginning, since they were just a startup business. And I have seen that tool evolve and grow at a rate that I don't actually see many software products move at. And so one of the things that struck me in the last couple of weeks is Perplexity's a really big couple of weeks. They've just added
Well,
a
explain
ton.
first. What did Perplexity start off as?
Perplexity was just another one of these LLM tools, and it basically became an alternative to Google search. And for me, it certainly replaced 100% of my Google search volume. I don't use Google now for anything because what Google provides me is 10 blue links, and what Perplexity provides me with is the answer I'm looking for.
With all the deep insights behind the answer.
So for the last 6 months, I don't use Google, I use Perplexity.
Okay.
But I used it like I used Google search. But more and more as they've added to the product, I'm now finding Perplexity to become the Swiss Army knife, the tool that can do almost anything. So by my count, in the last 2 or 3 weeks, Perplexity has added effectively 4 other companies' products. And so I'll name what those companies are. They've basically added Yahoo Finance And I mean the subscription version, the $59 a month subscription version of Yahoo Finance.
Which does what?
They now have an incredible finance section on Perplexity that not only gives you the stock values of any company and how that's fluctuated over time, but it will also give you instant access to the most frequent or the latest earnings call, the full transcription from that earnings call, and then it will summarize the transcription automatically and tell you the key insights from the call. These are normally subscriptions that you would pay a lot of money to somebody like Yahoo Finance or Bloomberg.
Bloomberg Terminal was always a big one for that.
So the listeners obviously can't see it right, but I'm sharing my screen here and I'm showing Brian and Andy, this is the Tesla stock. So it shows us how the stock's moved over time, and that's all standard Google Finance stuff, right? But here's where it gets different. Here's the transcript from the most recent earnings call. And then here's all the key insights automatically generated from the transcript.
Summaried, yeah.
So for us geeks who follow the financial markets, that's super duper helpful. Yeah. Like really, really helpful.
Warren Buffett as an agent. Clever.
Does it have the 10Qs or any of the kind of...
It has access to all the follow-up documents and the deeper financials. Okay.
Fantastic.
So it swallowed that product. The next product that it swallowed was basically Manus. So we've discussed Manus before in the podcast. So Manus was basically one of the first AIs that could go and do stuff. It was one of the first great examples of agentic AI.
So it was a wrapper of a bunch of tools, wasn't it?
Yeah. What made Manus different, instead of being an LLM, you were actually interacting with a complete compute environment that could draw on resources and packages to go and create whatever you just asked it to create.
Download plugins and patches and whatever it needed to get the task done on your behalf.
Scrape this website, get me the information, then build a interactive dashboard based on all the information you just scraped off the website. Manus had that to itself for a minute because what does anybody have an AI for longer than a minute, right? But basically, Perplexity's just completely disintermediated Manus by taking all their functionality, calling it Perplexity Labs, and adding it right into the Perplexity platform without changing the subscription price. You get it for the same $20 a month that you've always paid. Now, I've showed both you guys examples of applications that I was able to build on Perplexity. Each application taking on average 9 minutes. And so I'm just going to walk through a couple of examples here. So Brian is a legendary figure in the eyewear industry.
A legend in his own lunch break.
And so just as as an example of what was possible, I built...
Land Richard Branson. I don't know what you're talking about here.
He's the Bono of eyewear.
I basically asked Perplexity to build an interactive dashboard. So here was the prompt. Create an interactive dashboard of the UK eyewear market, break down all the key information into charts and graphs, and make the application interactive. In particular, focus on eye appointments and glasses sales versus contact lenses, and show the impact of laser surgery on these over time. On that single prompt, it took 9 minutes, it compiled a bunch of assets, and it built actually really quite a beautiful dashboard that's completely interactive.
It's very pretty looking. It looks like it's got good fit and finish to it.
Yeah, it's got great fit and finish to it. I mean, if somebody told you this was built by a graphic designer, you wouldn't really question that, right? Shows you market size, annual growth rate, how many eye appointments annually. Turns out it's 23.6 million.
That's the disruption of Mintel right there.
Yeah.
That's a Mintel report in 10 minutes.
And am I right in saying, Brian, you quickly sense checked a lot of the information on here and basically just was like, yep, that's directionally accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been using ChatGPT to do something similar with deep research, but of course it's coming in a very scripted form, doesn't it? In that lovely, beautiful dashboard way that you've created, which is super important to get your insight.
Yeah.
Oh, that was great.
So you can now build apps, any kind of app you like on Perplexity. You now can build visualizations. You can build entire slide decks. I mean, basically, if you can dream it up, Perplexity will have a good run at now trying to build it. So again, I'm seeing really incredible results from that. Built Andy an interactive dashboard, which had key insights into it,
For
into
the wedding industry.
He's moving to Gretna.
It turns out most of the weddings in Scotland are happening in Gretna Green, famously. So again, more incredible examples. The other product that it swallowed for me is Apple News. So now Perplexity is also my news feed. So I come in here and I get my top stories, and I can filter that on tech and science. I can filter it on finance, entertainment, arts and culture. So it's also where I get my news. So it's basically consumed Apple News in my use case. And then finally, it's actually starting to become a meaningful name in sports. So I don't know if you know, but Perplexity actually sponsor Lewis Hamilton. They don't sponsor a Formula One racing team. They sponsor Lewis Hamilton as a driver.
Yeah.
Tapping into his global reach, his brand, how his followers are able to, spend money and move markets. And so
watch out Red Bull.
Is it cheaper? I'll take it it's cheaper to sponsor Hamilton as an individual than it is to sponsor the Ferrari racing team.
But it's maybe more impactful. I don't think
but
it's
you get
money,
all the
right?
impacts, right?
Perplexity is just raising new money at a $14 billion valuation. So I don't think money's the issue. I think they probably get more bang for their buck.
Yeah. It's the same as an influencer at the end of the day.
100%.
Direct connectivity
he is
with
the
that
F1
person.
influencer. Yeah.
So as a result of his or their partnership with Lewis Hamilton, they seem to get proprietary F1 data. So if you're unable to watch the F1 race on the TV, if you've got your Perplexity app on you, you can open it up and you can watch a racetrack simulator with real-time data coming off the cars, where all the drivers are. You see them whizzing around the track. You see the leaderboard being updated every couple of seconds. So you can follow the race live and in real time on Perplexity. The visuals behind it are stunning and the information's real-time and up to date. And I did actually follow the Spanish Grand Prix at the weekend on Perplexity, and I actually found it obviously I'd love to have seen it, right? I just wasn't in the house. So I had no option but to follow it on Perplexity. And honestly, it was a fantastic experience. So they are consuming so many products, rolling them into the Perplexity experience, and they have yet to change the subscription. I don't doubt that's coming down the line, but at the moment, they haven't changed the subscription price. Finally, news broke today that they're actually in a deal with Samsung. They're about to announce a deal with Samsung later in the year to replace Google search on Samsung phones, and for parts of the Perplexity agentic capability to be added to the Bixby capability, which is basically the Samsung equivalent of Siri.
Huge implications for Google in that one as well.
So Perplexity are the guys to watch. I predicted on last week's episode that between now and the end of the year,
somebody
Perplexity would be acquired.
Yeah.
Don't be surprised if it's Samsung or somebody of that ilk.
And you reckoned Apple was the natural acquirer for them because obviously their Apple Intelligence is just a steaming pile of fucking dog shit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Perplexity's killing it. Again, I think we've mentioned this before, but top tip, if you are a Revolut customer and you pay for a Revolut account, you actually get Perplexity Pro as part of your subscription. So don't forget to go and unlock that if you are a Revolut customer. So top tip.
And what's the rate limits like on Perplexity for
I've
all
never
this?
bumped into one.
No.
I have been using Perplexity since 8 a.m. this morning, almost non-stop, building apps, trying different things.
And you're not being toughed out or timed out
Never
or take a break
been
or
toughed out or hit any rate.
put on the naughty step?
Nope, not once.
Very good.
And then just as a little Bruce, so that's Perplexity. Just as a little Brucey bonus, I did want to talk about another really profound example of AI in action this week. And sadly, it's in the warfare space. Okay, so I'm definitely not opining or offering an opinion, good or bad. I'm just stating some facts here. So I thought the Operation Spiderweb, where 18 months to plan, 100 drones hidden in the roof of some wooden...
It was chalets, Arctic chalets, igloo chalet things that they were...
That were
sending
bus,
up.
that were trucked basically into...
all the way up through Russia.
Different parts of Russia, sometimes thousands of miles apart, even all the way through to Siberia. They were basically parked near strategic targets like the bomber, like the strategic atom bomber group of the Russian fleet. And so when the command was given, the drones were released and then
bursting out of the walls of the Arctic igloos.
Well, they basically came out of the ceiling roughly within 5 or 10 miles from the targets, traveled to the targets, and then running local AI models on the drones.
Identified the vulnerabilities.
They were able to look down at the target, which in this case was Russian bomber aircraft.
Nuclear bombers, yeah.
Now, these things are small. They're no bigger than a large dinner plate or a serving tray. So they're not enormous drones. They're about $400 each. They're running local AI models, and they have very small explosive payloads on them. So what they were able to do was look down at a Russian bomber, reason across that bomber using a local AI model, and then identify its weakest part, and then guided itself with its small explosive charge to the weakest part, which in this case was the fuel tanks on the wings. And with that small explosive charge was able to blow up the bombers. And it did that so successfully that 100 drones costing about $400 each caused somewhere between $5 to $7 billion worth of damage and wiped out about 40% of Russia's
strategic
bomber fleet.
Good night.
So that happened yesterday. So again, Paddy's not providing any opinion, good, bad, or indifferent. It's. I'm just looking at the AI story here, and so incredible.
We are well on our
real-time
way.
Implementation of AI in the field.
I'm sorry, we are on our way to Skynet. Autonomous, weaponized flying machines that think for themselves, reason themselves, identify targets, and blow them to fuck.
And I think
it's Skynet.
I think we've said on the podcast before, warfare eventually just becomes, we're already seeing it, but it's drone,
the drone
wars.
wars.
And it will be number of drones multiplied by kill rate wins the war.
Yep.
So again, a staggering real world implications of having local AI models running on flying drones.
Which all ties into my dystopic Black Mirror episode from last week.
I love coming on here. It's a great laugh.
You feel great after it, don't you?
Good night.
Woo!
All right, so there
First
you go.
topic in the book, sign up for Perplexity tomorrow. Use offer code. No, I'm only kidding. No.
Right, Andy, what have you got for us?
Okay, the first one that I wanted to tackle here was a conversation that we had with our mate Stephen this morning, who's a quantity surveyor in a company. He's a very ambitious guy, doing great in his job, very keen and anxious to kind of get on and progress in his career. And he was asking the question, can you be entrepreneurial without being an entrepreneur? And of course, the very short answer is yes. We actually have a phrase for it in the industry, which is an intrapreneur. Somebody, an entrepreneurial person working as an employee inside of a company. So I thought there was a bunch of different angles we could really attack this from. But what I wanted to really start, I always think a good place to start with any of these things is kind of defining terms. So an entrepreneur working inside of a company, what are the qualities of character that these people would exhibit that would basically set them apart, separate them out from a kind of traditional worker bee employee?
Brian, do you want to take a run?
Yeah, I remember a trip, a learning journey to Stanford actually, and they were lecturing on entrepreneurship, and it was quite interesting when you said this was on your docket today, and I thought. Like they talked about this as a culture of innovation, within the business. And I suppose startups have got tons of idea, tons of freedom, and no resources.
Yeah.
But people within organizations have got unlimited resources.
Yeah.
And really tight constraints on failure.
Yeah.
And even the Babson guys actually talked and lectured and taught businesses how to create and generate cultures of innovation.
Yeah.
So it is quite an interesting space to think about how you do that as a leader within an organization. So the characteristics I think you're talking about.
Yeah, that would set them apart from a standard worker bee employee.
I think that's the common denominator. You need people with that entrepreneurial mindset in your organization, whether or not you're the leader of that business. Yeah. So you got to employ them, you got to seek them out, and then you've got to give them a sandbox, a place to play with resources and freedom, and it doesn't contaminate the main company. I think a good example of that was BMW when they were doing their electric iCars. That was a separate factory, miles away from the internal combustion engine guys, and they were allowed to play.
Yeah.
So you've got to create these cultures.
So there's got to be a
innovation.
culture fostered to basically allow these people to flourish in the environment. But in terms of so I was thinking obviously in terms of qualities of character. So proactive problem solvers as opposed to just task completers. That would be a
Yep, I like that.
an obvious one, wouldn't it?
Yep.
Ownership mindset. Thinking more of an owner, even though you're essentially an employee inside the business. So kind of first principles type thinking there.
Yeah.
And I think a a customer obsession. So instead of trying to please your boss or trying to please your department head or your, customer service head, you're thinking more about everything as an owner, thinking more about the customer and what the problem is and approaching it for that. So I do think they are quite a unique breed inside of companies. I think they're a very rare breed as well.
Which is a good thing, because I don't think you can have too many...
You can't have your company stuffed full of entrepreneurs.
Have too many entrepreneurs inside a business, because at some point the company has processes and procedures and needs people to follow them.
Yeah.
Because what I learned being acquired by a much bigger businesses is a lot of their processes and procedures exist for a reason that's not clear to you with your limited vantage point of the company. But when you actually sit down somebody for the SLT there and go, oh, this thing's driving me fucking crazy, why do we do it this way? They actually usually have a pretty rational reason for that. So I think you can have some of them in the business. I don't think you can have tons of them. I think.
And why is that? What are the challenges that they present to employees that make them frustrating?
That guy inside a big company. So I think job number one, results set you free. So you'll get a lot of latitude for the business to do crazy, wacky, weird things as long as you get results.
Yeah.
I think if you're a break glass, get shit done type of guy, and that you circumnavigate the processes, procedures, and the org chart of the business to get that shit done, people will put up with it as long as you show up with the results. If you're just running about creating chaos inside the business, but it's not actually leading to any end product, it's actually super dangerous to try and be entrepreneurial inside a big business.
Because you'll either go up through the totem pole at breakneck speed, or you'll get fired at breakneck speed, and it's generally a kind of binary outcome, because they do tend to do things so that they're entrepreneurs are quite bad for, again, obviating the org chart, just going straight to the person that they think can get the thing done for them.
Yeah. And
they also they don't follow rules very well. They question everything. So instead of just, this is how we do things in this department. Yep, sure, got that. They'll say, well, why are we doing it that way? Is there a better way to do it? Should we be doing it like this? And obviously, now I don't think I've ever managed an entrepreneur, but I can imagine that they would be very difficult to manage.
Yeah.
But I suppose if you get one and they're managed well, they can really add something to your company.
It depends if their heart's pure as well. Like, is the intent to cause chaos, or is the intent to actually get something really big? I mean, in the business that I was in, once we had established a reputation as a team that could solve the biggest, hairiest, intractable problems inside the company, we almost became SEAL Team 6 inside the business. They then came to us with the big, ugly, hairy problems and went, here's our next biggest, ugliest, hairiest problem. Go solve that. And
I think in
move across the business, create chaos, do whatever you need to do as long as you get it done.
For sure. I think in like SMEs in particular, that sort of, the business model that has built itself up in layers of dependent business. You just understand it. I mean, I had Vision Call business before, and I suppose led by me, it was creative and entrepreneurial in its thinking. We had to innovate, we had to do different things. But if you go to the talent pool of people in your organization, they've been recruited for their job roles. What I found was better was to create a space, a little team, and find the creative people within it. And they're not necessarily, called entrepreneurs. Of course they're not. They're people in marketing. They're people in sales. There might be an operational person. And to be selective about that team that you bring in and leave the amazing people that are superb at processes and running the business every day, but create this little micro team. And then you can implement your tools like design thinking and these different sort of strategic tools of creating new ideas and innovation within it. So they are there. Maybe we're all creative one day. And we've battered the shit out of our creativity through this kind of corporate sort of structure.
It naturally happens as the business gets bigger,
because there has to be structure and
there's got to be structure, but eventually they become bureaucracies, and it's very, very difficult to get things done in a certain size. I mean, I've been on the call with 17 fucking people to get the most trivial nonsense thing done that should be done in 5 minutes. And 15 of those 17 people said nothing, contributed nothing. It was basically 2 people talking in front of an audience of 15. And so I've seen that as the biggest. So I think the answer is, in a smaller company, it's easier to be an entrepreneur,
because you generally have proximity to the CEO or the senior leadership team of the business.
And the business is still sufficiently small enough where you can look left and look right, and you kind of know everybody involved and you know all the personalities. But once you get past 20, 30, 40 employees and there's a bit of structure that starts to get injected.
But in a bigger company, you're
difficult.
probably going to piss people off, and it'll probably be like the middle management people that you piss off, because you'll continually try and subvert
And let me
them.
tell you how you piss the people off as an expert in this. What you do
Track record of being pissed off, maybe.
is you go straight to the people that can solve the problem, and then do you know what happens? Their boss and their boss get really pissed off that you never went through them first.
The chain of command,
right?
yeah.
But what would they really be adding? You knew you needed to get to Steve to solve that problem. Steve reports into Dave, and Dave reports into Mary. And Mary's all pissed off that you never respected the chain of command and came through Mary. But what's Mary really adding to it? She's just a messenger passing on the request, right? Yeah. Or at worst, if she's a bad actor, she'll make up reasons and excuses why Steve actually can't solve your problem, and he's not able or doesn't have the resources.
And that request will never actually make it to a person that could have made a decision.
I pissed everybody off by going straight to Steve and didn't worry about what Mary thought about it. Mm-hmm. But my heart was pure. I wasn't trying to be a dick. I was just trying to get the job done.
Yeah. But I was looking at examples, and the culture thing is such a huge part of this. I was looking at examples of where this kind of entrepreneurship culture was fostered and succeeded in terms of hard outcomes, in terms of products and services that were launched from it. And the best one that I could find really is Google. So Google had this 20% concept where they gave employees permission to experiment, explore ideas, and innovate without needing managerial approval up front for 20% of the time that they were on the payroll, providing with a couple of provisos that it had to be in service of the larger mission of Google, and it had to serve Google in some way in the future. And some of the ideas that come out of that and some of the products that come out of that are unbelievable. Gmail was born out of 20% time. Mm-hmm. Google Maps, there was huge Google Maps improvements, huge AdSense improvements, and Google News itself was a project born in one of these 20% time environments.
So if your listeners are listening to this, I think with a business, say they're business owners, the business owner themselves is the greatest hurdle to enabling that to happen. And you don't need to be an entrepreneurial leader to allow those tools to take place, but you've got to put them in motion. Yeah. And you've got to allow them to play with those resources, or it won't happen. And I think in the kind of SME world, I think the problem is, and the opportunity, is that you've got so many people of my age running a business, it's comfortable. They kind of know they need to innovate, and they know they need to disrupt themselves, but they kind of don't want to take a risk. And they don't want to bet the entire house and all its benefits on something that could bring the house down.
Yeah. You're like an old hen sitting on your eggs, do you know what I mean? It's hard to...
Exactly. And your 20% model, if carefully handled, is never going to kill the entire goose. But you can contain it, you can give it some resources, you can behave like an entrepreneur, a startup, go prove the point, go give me a pain point, get some validation, new product innovation, new market innovation. You don't have to disrupt your entire business to get this. Yeah. And you need to give them the space to play.
Absolutely. And I've seen some businesses where literally if you go to the team with anything new at all that's now being planned for, they go, we need extra people for that. We need 3 extra hires if you want to get it. And I was like, whoa, stop. We're trying to get something done on AI here. You're telling me you can't engage. Okay. Giuseppe on our team spent 2 days getting a proof of concept working on some AI thing inside his division. So if somebody on your team went sick next week, if they had the flu and was off for 4 days, would you blow up the roadmap and tell the business you needed 4 extra people? Or would you go, they're off sick, they'll try and make some time up when they get back? And of course the answer is, no, of course we wouldn't. Okay, so pick somebody on the team to get metaphorically sick next week for 4 days, and we're going to put them to work on an AI proof of concept for your part of the business. Yeah.
But if companies are trying to attract and retain the best talent out there, what an incredible place to work, to be a part of that 20%.
100%.
Yeah. And therefore, their 80% of work that they're doing, you'll get the best.
And a great chance to get the financial outcome of a successful entrepreneur without having to do all the risky stuff that entrepreneurs have to do. 2 amazing examples here. So Paul Buchheit is the creator of Gmail inside of Google. So he started as an engineer in Google. He used his 20% time to build what became Gmail. He also worked in AdSense, another billion-dollar business. And do you know what his reward was? He got extra Google stock, became a multi-millionaire, became an early retiree, and later became a super angel investor because he had so much excess cash to deploy, all as an employee working within Google.
Yeah.
There's so many financial tools.
There's tons of entrepreneurs will never get that outcome or anything like it and have to do all the risk. Second and final one is Andy Jassy, the CEO of
AWS.
Amazon.
Yeah.
So joined Amazon in 97, wasn't a techie. He was an MBA, identified a need for scalable cloud infrastructure and conceived of and led the launch of AWS, which is now the most profitable division of Amazon. And his reward, he's now CEO of Amazon, earning an absolute fortune. So 2 fabulous examples of entrepreneurship inside a company's resulting in these huge outcomes for the people that embrace that.
You can do it in SMEs. You can find creative people. Sometimes innovation is just a marketing challenge. Yeah. They're there in your team. Give them a chance. There's loads of things like EMI schemes that can build rewards for people without you being a part of Amazon. And when you talk about an economy, there's so much latent potential within these companies right now, opportunities to be 100%. Able to spin out, create some technology, whatever it is. So yeah, great section.
And never been a better time to do it with all this AI capability and tools available. It's never been easier to do it.
And just final tip, I love that idea, Paddy. I was just thinking as you were talking there, proof of concept and getting something off the ground and coming to senior management or people inside the company where it is actually a good unlock as well for entrepreneurship. Yeah. Get something that you can actually show people. Do it in your own time if you have to.
Biggest career hack just about to be unveiled. For your next performance review, don't just show up. Show up with your AI 10% project that you did as a side hustle and just roll it out to your 100%. Boss on your performance
What do you think
review.
Of this? I think this would help in this department. All right, Stephen, I hope that helps you, mate. We tried to cover a few different angles on that. Hope she gets you a wee bit more clarity on entrepreneurship.
By the way, can I just expand on that point? I think every single person in the world needs to work on developing their AI trick bag.
Sure.
You remember when you went to a party when you were a little guy? And there was always some asshole there who was really shit at the guitar, but he had 4 licks that was enough to get him snogged at
Enough
the party.
about me.
I thought we were going to talk about Spin the Bottle. Everybody had a song,
It was enough to get him snogged at a party, and everybody needs to develop their version of that. Everybody needs, what is your AI trick bag? What's the 3 or 4 or 5 things you can bust out? And then you should be developing and continue to expand the AI tricks in your trick bag.
Yeah.
That's such a career hack, because nobody's fucking doing it.
Yeah.
So if you just do it, you're going to stand out so much from everybody else.
Put the afterburners
inside
on
the
your
business.
career progression,
Unbelievable.
100%. All right, moving swiftly on us from a very specific question to the most generic question that we've had since the very start of this podcast. So we sit down with a lot of people, pick our brains on AI, and I would say the number one question that we get is, we know AI is important, we know we need to do something with it. How do you even begin the process of implementing AI in your business?
Yeah.
Now, the stock answer is you always go straight to the tools, right? Well, I need ChatGPT, I need Perplexity AI, I need Google Technology. But before that, there's a whole strategy piece that you really need to think about. And for me, the starting point for this, and then I'll open it up to you guys, is executive sponsorship. So before you do anything, can you get buy-in for the company owner and at least the senior leadership team? Because to me, the thing that stops these things happening is actual people's resistance to it inside of businesses. So I think that's the first big hurdle that you have to overcome. Can you explain not just how to do something, but why it's important to do it and how everybody benefits for that? Because I think if you can't articulate that, it's going to be hard to win hearts and minds as you go through that process. And that's almost the first thing you need to do before you do anything else.
For sure. I mean, it's got to come from the top. So if the CEO is not all in on it, it's never going to happen inside.
And there needs to be a reason why, other than you eventually losing your job. You should participate in this so that we can eventually get rid of you. That cannot be the reason that you do it.
So the second thing is you need to create enough psychological safety inside the business where people can safely engage with these tools without feeling like they're participating in their own execution.
Yeah.
That is probably the number one thing beyond just the CEO being on board and having that executive sponsor inside the business. And I don't think AI is a zero-sum game. I honestly don't. I mean, why is doing more with the same resources not a fine outcome?
Yeah.
It's like, guys, exciting. AI is going to help us all become 35% more productive if we really implement it in all the different parts of the business. It should help us drive revenue growth. That should increase our earnings. everybody's a winner.
Yeah.
Why is that not a fine
'Cause
outcome from AI adoption?
in the first instance, Brian and I were talking about this on the way up in the car. It might slow down future hiring, but there's no reason why it has to fundamentally disrupt your foundational team that's already in the business. Do you know what I mean? If you can
100%.
if you can use AI to enable them to be fantastically more productive, and to drop the kind of low value, kind of high time, low value workloads and pivot them into other things, it should be a positive thing inside of companies.
And listen, I think if somebody drops out of the team, let's say somebody leaves, you can make a decision at that point. Do we want to backfill this role, or do we think we've got it covered with AI, or do we think we've created enough additional productivity where we don't need to backfill the role?
Yeah.
I think that could be one of the things. But like, no business owners coming to me going, Paddy, I have a diabolical plan I'm looking to execute on. I want to get rid of 45% of the workforce. How do we do it? Using AI. What they're all coming to me is, my ears are ringing about AI, but we don't know how to get, and we know it's important, and we know it's going to shake the planet to its core, and we know work is never going to be the same again. But
where the fuck do we start?
how do we get started? And where do we get started? And that's the problem.
Brian, you've got a lot of staff that work for you. In terms of the active companies sitting at this desk, you have the most staff out of everybody. What's been your general feedback internally when the idea of AI and productivity and stuff is floated?
Great question. So I remember a few months ago, Stefan standing up in front, Stefan, CEO of Iola, standing up in front of the senior leadership team, popping onto the screen and demoing, I can't remember what it was, but it was maybe some ChatGPT or something, and saying, here's where we start. Use this for your own personal productivity.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a great introduction to a safe way to introduce people to that world. Yeah. I did a talk a couple of weeks ago to 21 opticians, and only 25% of them had actually used AI. And that leadership team had brought them together to just try and embrace change. So there are severe ways that you can implement this, but I thought that was a really nice light touch. Mm-hmm. And what I saw from that was the creative team going hell for leather, using it for idea generation. The team were designing, for example, Box Park, which is a little pop-up down in London, Shoreditch. And they were using that to create concepts. Take to Stefan and say, what do you think of these concepts? And when they were narrowing down, then they were doubling down on their skill levels. So they were using it to accelerate creativity.
And these are chores that they might have had to engage a Fiverr
CAD
outsider and wait for stuff to come back, whereas they could do it all much quicker using the tools inside.
And so as an enabling tool for sure. Personally, I think as well as Stefan, at the higher level, from a strategic point of view, I think we mentioned it was on before, is that co-founder concept is saying, well, look, go do the research. We had an amazing member of staff that joined us after an internship, and she did a great study on, a bit like your Perplexity, on the market in Iola. And that got her a job. Mm-hmm. I mean, she was a first-class honours student. She did that role. But now she's a great employee, working really well for us. But I mean, I can now replicate that report that she did just about a year ago in 19 minutes on deep research. Yeah. Wow. And it's intuitive and it's sharp and it's good. So you have to think of yourself as an accelerant. Yeah. How can I get there quicker? Yeah. Which is a really powerful tool in a business. So if you can accelerate your result, then what else can you do with your time? Yeah. And I suppose, I shared that video. So Callum is one of our contact center people who deals with customers who will come and ask questions. Now we're scaling the business. So we're going to go and do franchise and joint ventures across the UK. So that role and team are either going to go up in numbers, but the quality of the work that they do, the technical strategic bit, is only 20%. That's really complex problem solving, dealing with prescriptions, this type of thing. And 80% of it is, where's my glasses? Yeah. So we can take that team through a journey, open transparency, and say, look, let's stick with the value add stuff, the stuff that customers really, really value, the interpersonal stuff, the really complex, dealing with people, sensitive, that type of stuff. And we can automate the rest in time. Yeah. Because as a job, who wants to do that mundane thing where you're really challenged and you're really excited about de-escalating a complaint, turning a 1-star out of 5 stars by just, real great customer service. And maybe that's where the agentic piece isn't going. So I suppose, to answer your question, transparency and honesty and real life examples of where we can bring it to life in the business that adds value to someone's role. Because Box Park looks amazing now. It's now a lab It's been created, innovation, cultures of innovation. It's a lab where you can go and test out different colours of your tints and just stuff we've never done before in our showrooms. And that came out of that.
And it was all
process.
enabled through the implementation of AI
Speeded
inside the
up.
business.
So I think the big takeaway for me there is, for the first time ever, we've actually got a technology here that you don't learn in the classroom, right? So it's not like you go to AI school for 4 years at college and like this stuff didn't exist in a meaningful way 6 months ago, or at least a production ready way 6 months ago. It does now. For me, the thing that makes this different to all the technologies that came before it, it's a learn by doing skill set. It's very difficult to just do the theory without the practical. And so the fastest way to learn AI is to open the freaking tools and start writing prompts. And
so before we get there, because I do want to unpack this in a very linear way for people, so we'll just take a wee pause there. So let's assume we've got sponsorship for the senior leadership team. We've got the staff on side. We're embracing this challenge of getting more familiar and implementing AI into the departments. What is the next step after that practically in terms of what would be the next strategy piece in terms of going department by department? What are the things that you would need to map out?
I mean, just getting them to open the tool is job number one. And then once they open the tool,
But before you open the tool, do you not need to go department by department, sales, marketing, processes, and do some kind of map out of
I don't think that needs to be a linear progression. I mean, fundamentally, you do a lot of these things in parallel, right? Why would you wait till you've mapped out all the processes before you ask anybody?
What are all the repetitive tasks that happen in each of those departments?
And you need to work that out, but it's a parallel effort. I mean, job number one is if there is no AI usage in the business, which is what we typically find when we engage businesses about AI usage, like Brian said, it's 10%, it's 20%, which means almost nobody's doing it. Job one is to get the team as a parallel effort while you're figuring all this other stuff out to open the fucking tools up. And then the next step is, how do you actually ask AI a question? Because it's very different to how you do a search on Google.
The one thing I would say, Andy, about that is I think you mentioned it yourself at the beginning. It has to dovetail with the actual strategy of the business. We talked about this as being, I remember starting a business and discovering email. You know what I mean? It was an email, literally. And it's the same thing. It isn't the solution, it's a tool. So what are the big strategic goals? What are you trying to achieve? And therefore, can you use this tool in any way to leverage the great example, the great benefit? Because if it's just about efficiency, there's only so much you can do in a small business, and it's really pretty boring.
There's only so many low value, high frequency, high energy, high frequency tasks that can be automated. At the end of the day, it does need to align with
what are you trying to achieve? So if you're trying to achieve an enhanced customer journey, where are your current pain points? Where is the friction in your business, and how can you then pull your agents away from repetitive tasks into areas which are going to add better value?
So would you say once you've got people with some kind of familiarization with the basic tool set, even if it's just ChatGPT, do you then pick one single thing to focus on at a time and say, right, we're going to take this one thing in this one department and we're going to just do that. We're going to measure the before and the after, and then we're going to start building it from there.
You secure quick wins in order to build momentum, right? Ideally, you'd have the whole high impact, high feasibility, high impact, low feasibility matrix. Right? So in an ideal world, you'd be working on high impact stuff that's high feasibility. But at this stage, it might be more important just to get some wins on the board. Okay, set people up for success. Don't give them an impossible, hey, automate these 52 things in the daisy chain and have it put it to the, I don't know how to do that. Okay, there's my first interaction with AI. It all seemed too hard, too difficult, and now I don't want to do it anymore. Set them up for success. Set them up on a task they can get done. Okay? And so for me, I always think, and I've said this on the podcast before, but it bears repeating, why... Brian, what do you value more in your life than anything else in the whole fucking world?
Oh, my lovely children wife,
and my wife.
Because you fucking made them.
Oh.
You made them and they're yours, and you're proud of them.
I can't take much
credit.
Every
time they achieve something, I'm sure, like me, you blow up the family WhatsApp chat and you bore everybody to fucking death about their achievements, right? So why do you do that? because they're yours and you made them and
you're
proud of
invested
them.
in them. Yeah.
So the biggest hack to AI adoption in the early days is to get each team in the business to make something with AI, because there's a pride of ownership thing that comes with that.
Yeah.
And they make something simple and it worked and they're proud of it and they want to show everybody. And all of a sudden, the brain's starting to fire with all the other things that's possible. What would be a good example of that? Every single organization in the world is trying to sell something. That's always a good place to start. So I always think an objection handling GPT is a fabulous introduction. Guaranteed success, 100%. Build an objection handling GPT. I did it as a demo to a client. I called it Pamela Vanderson. They were in the trucking business, and we built Pamela Vanderson, which was a objection handling GPT.
We're a big pair. Sorry.
And so, if you are a new salesperson joining that company, and you're on the phone to a customer, and they said, "Your fees are too high," you could immediately go into the GPT and go, "Customer says fees are too high." And you'll get an objection handling statement that will get spit back out. And it'll go, say this to keep the track dialogue moving forward. That is a great, proactive, high value, high feasibility win that you can get on the board.
That you can build inside your team with no external coder requirement.
Don't need to go and spend a bunch of money.
You can build it in gems. You can build it in,
build it on any of the main model makers. That is a great quick win to help build momentum and get people fired up and excited about the possibility of what can get done. And then you want to stitch a win like that together in every main part of the business. So think about all the constituent parts of the company: professional services, support, sales, product. Have every part of the business go and secure that quick win. Bring them all back. The fellowship of the cloud, the fellowship of AI, whatever you want to call that meeting, bring them all back together and get them to share best practice. Get
and
them
build
to
a
share
champion. Build a champion, an AI champion for the business, or an AI champion in each
component
team.
part of the business.
Go back to your cultures of innovation idea and your 20%. If you're swinging for the fences with a really innovative, stratospheric idea and it's not feasible, let's say, for example, you wanted to sit down and write out a report for every single customer that you wanted to see and all summarize everything. In the olden days, that would be impossible. You'd be there for an hour. You do it in 3 seconds now with an LLM. So I think like these ideas are interesting as well. They can be very creative solutions because you've got this tool now that can do things much more innovative, much more quickly, and much more productively, and, efficiently than they could before.
Yep, I think that's it. So I don't want to finish us on a downer here, but one of the outcomes before you even get to that quick wins thing is you'd probably run some kind of skills matrix on the team, right? Do we have critical thinkers? Do we have people who are capable of change and embracing new tools? Yeah. One of the outcomes for a lot of businesses will be you'll discover
it'll identify
the team that got you to this point is actually the team that might be able to take you forward in this new AI first, AI led world. And so it's actually important to do that skills matrix first and know what is the team's capability to move in this direction?
And it will invariably identify individuals that just aren't a good fit moving forward for the company.
Because
unfortunately,
I'm sorry, to everybody listening, and I hate to put it like this is not an optional trend that you can afford to sit out of. You have zero option, none whatsoever, to get on board with this.
So you can embrace it now or be forced to embrace it too late.
Or be fired.
Yeah.
But if you're sitting on the sidelines going, this is all bullshit, it all sounds like hard. I've been here for 20 years and I do my job well. Fuck them. I'll just, I'll continue to do that. I'm sorry, man. It's going to suck to be
the guy down the road's doing it.
Yeah.
And he's delivering a better customer experience, or he's saved 100,000 and he's spending it on marketing or whatever it is. It's a competitive
You'll be outcompeted by your competition who are taking it seriously, whose team is all in on being AI-led and eventually AI first. And so this is not an optional trend.
Back to your leader. It doesn't matter if the leader themselves understands it, but if they do not create that culture of innovation and adoption, then it's got to be led from the top.
But to me, that's the big takeaway from this conversation, which is you have to start with something that you can get a quick win at, which energizes the team, makes them believe that it's possible. So just start for the easiest task to automate and then just work your way up the problematic ladder from there to the more complex
and paint
stuff.
a positive vision. And address what's on everybody's mind up front. Do not fucking not address.
If I participate in this, I'm eventually going to get fired.
You kind of go, guys, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be brilliant. You're all on board, right? Tell me you're on board. Yeah, we're on board. And they're all sitting there like fucking hostages, you know? Like you have to address with
the why is
the big
so
thing
important.
you know that's on their mind. Guys, we're going to talk about the thing that's on your mind. I know it's on your mind. You're thinking, Paddy, how do I know if I engage in this, I'm not going to get fired? Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Let's address the elephant in the room.
Before you finish that chat with the 21 opticians,
yes,
one of the chaps said, this won't affect me, it'll affect my colleague. She's just newly qualified. I'll be finished up by the time this affects me. And I said, how long have you got? He goes, I retire in 20 years.
Now, if he said 20 months, it would still be touch and go, but 20 years,
I was down to 20 minutes. It's coming.
So there you go.
So, no, that was a good subject. And we've probably covered enough as we need to cover on this. So we've talked about where to get started, skills matrix. Do you have the right team? Do you have the data as well? Actually, that's another one. Like, is the data in a place you can actually tap into it to actually build out AI workflows and automation? So that would be another thing. You're probably running a prompt engineering 101 sessions for the team on a regular basis. How to write. People talk about hallucinations in AI, and really what they're mostly talking about with hallucinations is bad prompts.
Bad prompting.
Almost any shit hallucinations or shit output from AI can be explained away by a terrible prompt.
Yeah.
So it turns out that AI now hallucinates less than humans hallucinate. So hallucination is a solved problem. I'm not saying AI is perfect. It does screw some things up some of the time, but it does it less than humans do it.
Yeah.
And so we have to write better prompts if we want better outcomes.
Yeah. I've started asking it to design a
to
prompt
help you,
for me.
Yeah.
Absolutely. 100%.
It's great.
I don't know
it's
what
actually
I'm talking
brilliant.
about.
Here's a prompt. Make this prompt better. So that you will
flesh it
understand
out,
better.
and it's still missing context here. Flesh that out. Here's some more ideas for it. And for a lot of tasks, a prompt should be multiple pages long.
Yeah.
To actually get the output to the quality level that you're looking for. There we have it, Brian. Bring us home by continuing on our last conversation on entrepreneurship. I believe you've got some case studies that really kind of rail home the point.
Well, I've listened to your podcast now over the last few months, and I was furiously taking a few notes, and I said, if these guys
have lost 4 points of IQ by doing it.
and if these guys are ever daft enough to invite me back on, I'll be a couple of things. So it's awesome. Well done on that. I thought it was a great series. I really enjoyed it. Last week was Tech Week over in Glasgow, and I connected with a few people. So shout out to the kind of tech scaler guys and the mentors over there. Also meeting a lot of people that were running the accelerator now, you know, the NatWest accelerator. And we just chewed the cud and realized that this same prevailing problem is there, that people have advanced their startups to a point to then engage with accelerators or mentors and perhaps haven't really worked out their pain point.
Okay.
And it's an overspoken about concept, but I thought, like, to really drive it home, a case study would be a good idea.
Yeah, love it.
So you guys were talking about pain point, product fit, you know, all these types of concepts. And I think to be able to, I don't think you can overemphasize the importance of this. One of the distinctions I thought we could make was, first of all, the difference between starting a business and a startup. You guys talked about power washing, for example, you know, starting an optician's practice, dog walking.
Yeah.
I think what we're really talking about is this innovation piece, though, this piece of uncertainty. So if you're in the startup world, or going back to your entrepreneurship, there's uncertainty. So you could be a wedding band, but did you know that that platform was going to be successful?
Yeah.
Probably not. So you ventured into a world of uncertainty, and that's where the risk lies. 40% of businesses will probably go bust because they don't have that connection with a real pain point. That is required. So they're actually battering away at something which is not likely to succeed.
And there's a thing to that as well, Brian, right? Do you agree that it's one thing to be able to make an intellectual argument that there's pain there, but it only means something if you can implicate the pain? Can you make the customer feel it in a profound way? Because
that drives them
sometimes
to action. Yeah.
I mean, I've heard loads of guys made really compelling arguments for why that is a problem to be solved, but it doesn't hurt enough for anybody to get their wallet out and do anything about it.
I think so. And this is the key, which I found to be the most difficult thing, is to embrace, someone who is presented with an idea and ask them that question. Is that customer's hair on fire?
Yeah.
Are they aware of the problem? Mm-hmm. And are they currently solving it in a dissatisfactory way and hopefully spending some money in a dissatisfactory way?
Yeah.
And you can implement a better solution for them that's faster, cheaper, better, or whatever, and they will instantly swap. And if you're not hitting that, then your chance of startup success is very low.
Yeah.
Not if you're an optician or a wedding band or a power washing company, because there's always a little bit, you can be a little bit better, a nice to have, candy, vitamins.
And you don't need that much revenue to make a salary out of it or something.
But I think people totally underestimate how difficult it is to get customers to move from one solution to another, B2C or B2B.
Yeah.
So a story that I thought was really excellent, that sort of brought that to life, was a company called ATOB. So a bunch of guys were sitting just before COVID and they had this great idea of Uber for buses, whatever it was. COVID came along, thing fell on its arse, and they're just sitting about. But they actually understood something during COVID which made them think about logistics. Trucks kept trucking. We got supplies, we got food. So they conceptualized with a little bit of research. P.S. This research could be done with AI.
Yeah.
You could be on AI going, tell me the problems associated with the logistic trucking industry globally, and it would probably go away and find some stuff. That's what I've been doing quite recently. But what they did was they hypothesized that this industry was extremely fragmented. They were all ones and twos, small mom and pop businesses. There was no big conglomerates, unlike shipping and aviation. So they hypothesized that there would be problems, but they had no idea what the problems were. Never mind a solution. So they're big techie guys. Mm-hmm. So what they did was they went on the road, right? So they actually travelled to Vignan Velivela. It was a CEO. He's got a brilliant podcast, actually, which you listen to the story.
Saying that with 3 pints of Stella in you.
100%. So he hit the road, the I-5, and he just hung about with truckers, right? So he went to truck stops, he went to motels, and he's only the second professional group of people that have ever done that. I was going to say, the oldest profession in the world. And then suddenly these techie guys come up from...
It's like that X video that was going about for a while where there was a wee Mexican trucker guy and he fell asleep at the wheel. And as he impacted the car in front of him, a naked hooker came flying out at 500 mile an hour for the curtain behind them.
I knew when I brought this story up that you degenerates would take it there. But anyway, you did.
Sorry, mate, to derail.
Sorry, mate. Put you off
absolutely.
Your train of thought there.
Apologies to all our trucking colleagues out there. But they hit the road and they basically asked them about the daily grind. What gets in the way? And this is an amazing bit of product, a bit of pain discovery. You're a problem seeker as an entrepreneur, first and foremost, an anthropologist almost. And hanging out with these guys, they come up with two incredible pain points, which given the size of the market was incredible that they existed. And it's centered around fuel cards. Mm-hmm. So they were in this old legacy fuel card business system. So basically you had to go in and get pre-approval in garages that were only available from Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. It always failed. Some reason the tech always failed. And
just to be clear, by the way, these guys had no experience of the trucking industry at all.
Zero, no, absolutely not. They knew about logistics and sort of, buses and that type of stuff, but they knew nothing about trucks, techie guys. So anyway, they went down and they realized that these fuel cards were creating huge havoc. The average trucker spends £1,200, the amount of an iPhone, every 2 days.
On fuel.
On fuel.
Wow.
And they were using their own cash. They were using... the payday loans to get their money to pay their drive. The drivers were using payday loans to get the money to actually fuel these cars.
Because the company would expense it afterwards.
And it was like the pain was absolutely incredible. And when they were saying this is a nightmare, these words were coming up. So you imagine you employ 2 drivers and they've got payday loans to get their money back from the company for these fuel. Huge pain points, and no one was fixing it. So this became, generic. They were speaking to thousands of people and this was the problem. So came back and created a solution. So then and only then did they put their really clever techie stuff. Cut a long story short, the problem was fraud. So MasterCard would not touch this business because anybody could be fueling up, anybody could be taking the cards, and the companies wouldn't touch it. So they leveraged an existing MasterCard infrastructure and built a front end which basically connected the telematics of a truck, which put it at the point of sale for the merchant. The truck is in the garage.
The transaction must be correct.
Yeah.
It reduced the concept of fraud by 99%, which leveraged, MasterCard.
Took away all MasterCard's concern about clawbacks and all that kind of stuff.
So they basically built a Stripe for trucking.
Wow.
Now, instantaneously, none of those problems existed.
Yeah.
Thousands and thousands of truck companies engaged. They became a $1 billion valuation within a year.
And what's the name of this company?
ATOB.
ATOB.
Wow.
ATOB.
What a story.
So when you think about the wider lesson of that, I think whoever you are, you're going to be in this sort of the DVF format of desirability, feasibility, and viability, which is the kind of things you were talking about in your podcast. If you think about desirability, they were hunting down problems and they were guaranteeing themselves that if they could fix this problem, that trucker would engage. Mm-hmm. Then they leveraged another value proposition to make sure that the owners of the trucks bought in. Because if they had everybody on a kind of Revolut-y, Stripey type platform, they could offer discounts. So fuel was becoming cheaper for the owner, brilliant for the driver. So they're pretty sure that desirability was right up there.
Yeah.
Could it be built? Yes. Could they have recreated MasterCard? No. But by unlocking the problem with MasterCard, they could build quite a simplistic solution at the top end, which enabled it to happen. They were techie enough to do it. They didn't have to, no rocket science required. And when it came back to the last bit, as a profitable business, the viability, which is the key bit, can you build a profitable, sustainable business? Well, the element of that was they knew that they could charge enough of that transaction as a cost, which represented the pain solution. Yeah. So they could work in this space, which the value that they created was greater than the pain. And that's a real key element to this.
So just say that again, the value that they created was greater than the pain, defined as...
Well, you could put that to a discount to the owner.
Yeah.
And you could put that to the frustration of the actual drivers, churn, and all these types of elements. And when you're creating these solutions, when you're trying to price those solutions to the customer, you're trying to capture, say, 10 or 20% of the value that you create. So that value is locked in as a startup.
Yeah.
And then billions and billions of pounds.
Exploded their valuation.
Correct.
Just got on the screen here, Brian, and I was just reading this testimonial here, which I thought just puts a fabulous exclamation point on it. So, see why Stotland Trucking chooses ATOB. Stotland Trucking, a major player in transportation, faced obstacles with Fuelman and Comdata fuel card providers. These challenges involve managing invoices, card malfunctions, and slow customer support. To boost efficiency, Stotland Trucking switched to A&B, gaining benefits such as streamlined reporting, convenient fuel fleet card activation and deactivation, round-the-clock support, and a 10% fuel cost reduction after switching to A&B.
You think about 10% of an iPhone every 2 days, value to the customer, and an absolutely ecstatic workforce who are super, super happy with the solution.
They're no longer in debt.
The big man can go. We don't need a payday loan. Now, I just thought, it's a high-level example,
I'll put my toe so far up your arse, you'll think Doc Martens have made hats.
No more for the truckers of the United States of America. But I thought, I never see this. What I usually see is people come with an idea and a sort of solution, and then they're told to go back and speak to customers. Mom Test, by the way, great book on how to do that. But I thought, what if when people, your listeners, people who are struggling to find jobs or coming out of businesses or your cultures of innovation that you've talked about earlier, what about engaging with some of these principles?
To conceive it all ahead of time.
Go speak to big cohorts, huge industries, places with no preconceived ideas. Capability, technical capability, entrepreneurial capability, but no idea. And see what you find.
Yeah.
And then come away and construct a business solution for that.
Because the traditional thinking would be, you don't have any experience in trucking, you've got no business being in this industry whatsoever, fuck off.
Yeah, exactly. And the humility, what I loved about it was, and they describe it in some of the talk, they describe themselves as the humility to go to those truck stops, to sit and have egg and chips with these guys and just go, what is your problem,
just
man?
Talk to them.
We can fix this for you, maybe.
The biggest, ugliest, hairiest problem you've got in the entire business, like just asking the questions and then listening to the answers. And I'm sure there's an example like that in every single industry.
And it's a wee bit AI counterintuitive as well, isn't it? Because you would say, well, you don't need to just do the research on Perplexity, but
you don't find that.
There's nothing really replace the deep contextual information you get from talking to people that are actually doing the job.
I realised when I did that AI didn't feature in that particular story, and it didn't. But to my own journey, where I am at the moment, I think if you think you know an industry, there you go, right? You maybe don't. So what I think's been helpful to accelerate innovation is to run it through deep research. And out there will be consumer reports if it's a B2C type thing. And in optics, that's a little bit of anecdotal evidence of overselling and pressure sales and this type of thing. And then in those sources are the gems. Where it's gone and created the information, open up the sources and do your proper research. And then create a wee hypothesis and then go speak to as many customers as you can. And then that will then
give you the foundational information that you need to figure out if you're even going to progress with the idea at all. And then you can use, in this example, the physical speaking to the truckers as a kind of last mile work to actually get something production ready.
I had a business that was verticalized. It started life in office products. Then we went into electrical distribution. Then we went into safety.
Industrial.
Then we went into welding and gas. And each time we did an industry, we were cocksure that we knew exactly what the problems were, and then we'd spend a year getting our ass handed to us until we actually joined the trade association, sat down and talked to the customers, went on site and did the on-site visits. And only then did we discover the true pain points in that industry, what people were really struggling and what the solution needed to do to have established product market fit with that community of distributors. You never get away from the learning curve. And in every industry you go into, it's got its quirks and it's got its weirdness, and you can't discover it without going and spending time.
And every time you try and subvert that process, you get your teeth kicked.
So if you ask yourself why it exists, and I was on a call today with Mo Hanafi, who's one of the mentors over there, and it was just a great chat. We just had a bit of a brainstorm on it. In essence, where people who start businesses have their own egos and dissonances and biases, and we love the product. We love our children. We love what we have created, and people are extremely talented at pulling great software and great solutions, great businesses together. So there's a humility that is required to bring that concept sooner, or at least take that concept to as many customers as you can, and be prepared to take that on the chin if it isn't resonating.
Yeah.
And a brilliant mindset to really internalize and take to heart, because it's not just useful for business building, it's useful in career as well. You can take all the same principles into your department, start speaking to people in the department, what's the problem, blah, 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 and then come up with the solutions that you can then present to the people further up the ladder. So a universal skill set.
Don't you the session you did about, and you've talked about it today as well, is as a young person growing into an organization or making their impact in an organization, and one way to buck the trend is to be able to lift your head up out of your phone and go out and push the boundaries and speak to some real humans. Because if you can do that, I think that's a bit of a competitive advantage.
Yeah.
And if you have the EQ to listen, 2 ears, one mouth, and get out there and just listen. I mean, the Mom Test book, for anybody that's out there, is a great book because it tells you to get out and talk about problems and hide your solution. Mm-hmm. Actually, do not talk about your product, because you're just going to skew the conversation. So tell me about your grind. Tell me about your problems. Tell me about what you actually...
But it's a different talk show, but I think the two things you just mentioned there are the things that kids are struggling with the most just now.
Yeah.
Which is physically interacting with each other, having conversations and listening.
100%. But I do love that practical example that you just provided. I think it was a phenomenal example.
Yep,
really brought it to life for me, and then aligns with all the things that I genuinely believe in, which is the pain's got to be real. You've got to be able to implicate it. It's got to be so freaking sore that the customer will feel it in his move to solve it if a better solution comes along. And obviously the ATOB example passes every
And
one of those
what's
tests.
sorter than a million truckers peppering the mothership company with the complaints about the payday loans they can't afford to pay for fuel? Yeah, brilliant. Great example.
You've just brought something to life. If you don't solve that, if you looked at that business, if you went into that business, the fuel card business, you'd think that the answer was in an agent to answer all the complaint calls.
Yeah.
But the actual answer
was to fix the problem altogether. Yeah. Not just set up the triaging layer within the company. Yeah. 100%. Well, in the absence of Stephen Valance, somebody has to make the siren call at the end of the podcast to beg for likes, shares, and subscribers. So before I do that, have we done enough, or is there anything else you want to touch on here?
We're an hour and 10 in. I think we've done loads.
Woo! Coming to you live. Okay,
Episode 19 in the can.
What episode is that?
19.
19?
Hail to
damn
the
it,
yell.
Okay, guys, so
teenage years.
before we finish up, we actually need to start front loading this because I don't know how many people get to the very end of the show. So I think in the future we'll start front loading this begging request, and I certainly won't do it justice in the way that Stephen can. But what I will say is, please listen, please like, subscribe, and if you do nothing else, share. We are trying to get our message out to as many people as possible. So like, subscribe, and share wherever you get your podcasts. We are absolutely everywhere, from Apple and Amazon and Spotify. And if you can't get us in any of those platforms, if you don't have access to those platforms, you can get us on YouTube, or you can get us at our own website, www.roundtablerethink.com.
Come on now.
Or is it co.uk?
No, it's com. .com, you...
www.roundtablerethink.com. There
All
you
right.
go.
Episode 19 in the can. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.